Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and it's always a delight to have a very special guest with us today, one who I think you'll find to be extremely interesting. Of all the programming topics that we do here at theDove, and especially with Focus Today, when we get on the subject of apologetics, that one seems to get the most interest. And today we are delighted to have with us Dr. Richard Land. He's president-elect of Southern Evangelical Seminary, a non-denominational seminary based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they're putting together an apologetic conference. It's really helps you to answer some of the tough questions in Christianity. So, Dr. Land, what a delight to have you with us, sir.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you. And this will be our 21st annual conference. It's the longest running annual apologetics conference in the country.
Well, what a delight. And you've been doing this for quite some time. What is the theme this year, and what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, the theme this year is Reasons for the Hope. You know, there are a lot of things out there that would cause Christians to be a little depressed about the current state of American culture and American society. And so we're focusing on Reasons for the Hope. We have Dr. Norm Geisler, the founding president of our seminary, who is going to be speaking on Is Jesus the Only Way? The Challenge of Pluralism to Evangelicalism, and then Theistic Evolution, and the fact that it is a challenge to evangelical Christianity, which we need to meet, we need to address. Os Guinness is going to be speaking on the journey, a thinking person's quest for meaning, and the importance of religious freedom and the fact that it's under threat around the world. Bill Dembski is going to be speaking about intelligent design. Gary Habermas is going to be speaking on the Shroud of Turin, whether it's evidence for the death and resurrection of Jesus. And Josh McDowell is going to be speaking to us about the perfect storm, 4 cultural trends that challenge every truth we know, and how we can respond to them. You know, apologetics at its core means loving people enough to answer their honest questions. And we will be answering questions. We're going to have, I think, one of the more interesting things we're going to have is we're going to have a debate, a friendly debate among Christian brothers about old earth versus young earth, which is a subject that Christians discuss. And we understand that strong believers and sisters in Christ, brothers and sisters in Christ, can disagree about that issue, but we want to have a debate to help focus everyone's thinking.
You know, that is absolutely fascinating. Your lineup is just superb. And is it too late for people to attend? Oh,
no. No. They can register. It is going to be October 11th and 12th, Friday and Saturday. And I hope that when they decide to come, they'll come a day early, come at least an evening early, because I'm going to be inaugurated as the 4th president of SES on the night of October the 10th. Be an evening service, and Dr. Geisler will be speaking, and then Ergen Canner, who is a former student of mine, will be speaking, and then I'll be speaking, and it'll be a fun time on that evening before the conference, which will be all day Friday and then Saturday into the afternoon. And people can register by going online at ses.edu, or they can call 704-847-5600 and ask for extension 201. And if they want to know more information about it, they can go to ses.edu.
All right. Well, first of all, Dr. Land, congratulations on your next assignment in life, and many blessings to you. You remain in our prayers for the terrific work that you do and have been doing. What an honor to serve. You know, this whole subject of apologetics is an incredible one, and it seems like in this world where every tenet of our faith is being challenged in the marketplace, are Christians prepared for the right answers?
Well, I think increasingly as Christians, and this is an adjustment for American Christians, we have to look at America as a mission field. Mm-hmm. And we have to study our culture and the anti-Christian and non-Christian presuppositions of much of our culture the same way we would study a foreign land that we were going to try to go and evangelize. And we need to be prepared to show the shortcomings of those erroneous, non-biblical views, and the truth of Scripture and the truth of a biblical and Christian worldview. It's not enough anymore to just quote Scripture. We've got to be, as Peter said, we have to always be ready to give a reasonable explanation of the hope that lies within us. A reasonable explanation of the hope that lies within us. No one's ever going to be argued into the faith. But people can be brought under conviction, as I think of C.S. Lewis, who says he was dragged kicking and screaming and looking for a way of escape into the Christian faith. The inexorable logic of the Christian faith drove him to this, and I've seen this. I personally know about a half a dozen people who were either atheists or agnostics who became Christians through reading C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity.
Right.
Because, Lewis gets right to the nub of it right away, and so will we. Jesus is either a lunatic on the level with a man who thinks he's a poached egg, or the greatest imposter in the history of the world, or he is exactly who he said he was, the incarnate Son of God. As Lewis said, don't give me any of this patronizing nonsense about his being a great moral teacher. By everything that he said and everything that he did not leave that option open to us.
He also went, and I'm going to paraphrase here, he also said that we're trying to convince people that they're sinners when yet they don't understand that there's a higher law. If they don't understand there's a higher law, then they'll never understand why they would fall short of that law.
Well, that's true, although I think, that there is a law written on the conscience. The natural law, the general revelation of God, the law written on the heart that Paul talks about in the 2nd chapter of Romans. And I think that the universal testimony to that is the fact that we've never found any culture in the world, no matter how primitive, no matter how advanced, that has not had some form of religion that attempts to expiate and to deal with an intuitive sense of guilt, that they have sinned against some higher authority and that they are guilty. To me, that is an incredible testimony to the fact that there is a God and there is a law written on the heart, and it's universally acknowledged by human beings.
Beautifully said. What about some of the social issues? You're going to take that on during the conference. As you know, we're battling same-sex marriage in this country. We're still battling the sanctity of life. How will the conference address some of those sensitive issues?
Well, we will address them. I'll be speaking and I'll be addressing them. They are symptoms. The abortion debate, the euthanasia debate, the same-sex marriage debate, all of these are symptoms of a titanic struggle going on between a Christian worldview and a non-Christian worldview for the high ground in our culture. I'm going to be talking about the 7 mountains of culture. About 1970, God gave Bill Bright and Lauren Cunningham and Francis Schaeffer at approximately the same time the same vision. And that was that there are 7 mountains in culture, and that if we're going to impact the culture for Jesus, we've got to pay attention to and seek to capture the high ground of those mountains. And of course, religion is one, but media is one, the arts, government, the economy, communications and media, and we're going to talk about the fact that as Christians we have an obligation and a responsibility to climb those mountains and plant the flag of Christ on the top of them.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that because we try hard even with media, and I see media as the mission field to reach America today in so many ways, especially with the digital media that's available to us. I mean, what an opportunity. And then on another hand, Dr. Land, it's our day. I mean, the world is crying, who can I trust and what is truth? I mean, it seems like it's our day. Well,
the internet and the transformation of media is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It's a curse in that it provides universal access to the grotesque debauchery of pornography and other forms of of decadence. But at the same time, it has broken the national media's monopoly on what gets told and what the truth is. You know, back when in 1984, for instance, about 90% of Americans got their news from the 3 networks' evening news broadcasts. Right. It's now down to about 16%. And a good example of the difference and the opportunity it gives outlets like Dove Radio and TV is that the Dan Rather's attempt to subvert the George Bush re-election campaign in 2004 with this fake story about President Bush being a draft dodger during Vietnam by joining the Air National Guard, that story would have worked in 1986 or 1990, coming out a month before the election. Right. But because of the internet and because of all of the people who could investigate the documents, within 24 hours, it was Dan Rather that was undone rather than the president, as the story was seen to be false and a fake. And so, to me, what Dove Radio and all Christian media are doing is we're providing the alternative to what used to be the monopoly of the secular news, which comes almost entirely from one viewpoint. You know, there was a study done about 30 years ago that showed that the people who decide what gets put on the national news are overwhelmingly liberal and overwhelmingly Democrat. And that there's not, you know, and recently, frankly, in the last election cycle, I think that the national media gave up any semblance or pretense of being balanced or fair. Yeah.
Dr. Land, thank you. I'd like to have you back one more time between now and your conference. And again, people, I'm going to have you back in just a moment. I'm sorry, we had 2 segments with it because there's so much to talk about here. When we come back, I want you to, again, give us those 7 mountaintops that you want to conquer, because I think they're very important. We'll be back with Dr. Richard Land in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, we're back with our very special guest today, Dr. Richard Land. He's president-elect of Southern Evangelical Seminary, and he'll be inaugurated coming up in October. And he's with us today to talk about SES Apologetics Conference, also in October. And I tell you, if you can go and spend 2 or 3 days, I think it'll be riveting and also very, very informative. Dr. Land, it appears, and you mentioned it at the very beginning when we started our conversation, that religious freedom in America is under attack. I mean, whoever thought we would see this day in America? It's no longer just the issues, and we're passionate about those issues and some of the social issues that we're battling, but now the very possibility of believing what we believe could be deemed illegal in some way. I mean, did you ever think we'd see this day?
Well, I hoped we wouldn't, but of course, you know, when I was in high school, I read 1984 by George Orwell, and I knew that, you know, government intervention and government thought control was certainly a possibility. We certainly faced a threat of a different kind of thought control from the Soviets and from communism, but now it's a rampant secularism that's endangering us, and we see the restrictions that the government's trying to put on our people in the military. Saying that they can't share their faith. And we have the possibility that people will be fined and be arrested for refusing to condone and to participate in same-sex ceremonies. Now, I think the First Amendment to our Constitution will protect the church from the kinds of things that are happening in Canada, where pastors are being arrested for exegeting Romans 1 and 1 Corinthians 6 in their pulpits. But I think that the First Amendment may not, if we have a liberal court, and we have a liberal president, and we have a liberal Congress, it may not protect us from speech codes and suppression of the freedom of expressing our faith and what the Bible says about homosexuality outside of the church itself, and even in Christian schools and in the public square. We have First Amendment religious freedom protections, but we are not going to have them unless we use them. I would encourage everyone to read the Manhattan Declaration.
Right.
My comment on the Manhattan Declaration is, if we're all willing to go to jail, none of us will have to.
Do you think we're heading?
But we're going to have to be willing to stand up for our convictions and to say, we're going to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and we're going to render unto God that which is God's. And ultimate allegiance and ultimate authority belong to God, not Caesar. And if Caesar seeks to force us to obey Caesar rather than God, we're going to obey God, regardless of the consequences.
It appears we're heading towards that. We're heading towards some kind of a conflict that's going to result in some kind of incarceration at some level. I don't know. Hopefully it won't come to that, but it appears we're heading down that road, and it may be done in a subtle way. We've watched the HHS go after the Catholic Church, and I think Mike Huckabee said it best. At that day, we were all Catholics. We all have to push back on that. We see those kind
Absolutely.
of, you know.
Absolutely. And, I don't think the government will go after imprisonment, because the image of, of a conservative Martin Luther King in the Birmingham jail is too much.
Right.
What they'll use are fines.
Money.
Crippling, overwhelming fines that will seek to force, put churches out of business. I've already made the decision that if I am forced at some point by conscience to disobey the law passively, that I will resign as president of SES, so that I don't involve SES in any ascending liability, and I'll do my duty as a private citizen.
All right. It appears that as we mount up these pushbacks, that the media, the dominant other side of them, the secular media, would say, well, there you are. See, you're showing your bigotry. You're showing your hatred. You're showing your antichristness, so to speak. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome evil with good?
By speaking the truth in love. We have the courage of our convictions, and we speak the truth in love. I think that what we must do is each of us must ask God to cultivate within us the spirit of the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah, who certainly spoke the truth. God said he put his words in Jeremiah's mouth, but he did it speaking of the rebellion and the idolatry and the sin of the people of Judah. But he did it with a catch in his voice and a tear in his eyes, known as the weeping prophet, because it broke his heart to see the pain and the suffering and the sadness that came as a result of breaking God's laws and rebelling against God. We don't break God's laws, they break us. Mm-hmm. And you look at the human suffering in America today because of fatherlessness, the breakdown of the family, and the destruction that is wrought by pornography and sex trafficking. Sex trafficking.
Okay, sorry about that.
And then you see the horrors of thousands of babies being killed every day before they're ever born. And we wonder why God judges us as a nation. I'm shocked that God hasn't judged us more severely.
Yeah, wow. How are we to address churches that are embracing these changes in the culture, that are ordaining homosexuals. We even watched with great distress last week where the Queen said okay to same-sex marriages, and she's the head of the Anglican Church. How are we to respond to that one?
Well, I would say that you know, in the book of Revelation, we have the church at Laodicea, which is neither cold nor hot, and you have this incredible picture of Jesus knocking at the front door of his own church. And if anyone opens the door and lets him in, he will come in and sup with them, and they with him. So there are lots of buildings with steeples that have ceased to be churches. Mm-hmm. If the Lord Jesus Christ is not the Lord of that church, and they are not under biblical authority, then it's not a true church. It may be a social club. You know, when you turn the 10 Commandments into the 10 Suggestions, you're no longer part of Orthodox with a small O Christianity. Wow.
All right, one more time. The conference is coming up, and where can people go to get more information on it?
They can go to http://ses.edu/. That's about as complete as I can make that one. Or they can call 704-847-5600, extension 201.
All right, good.
SES.edu or 704-847-5600, extension 201. We love to have them. We've got plenty of room. The conference is going to be held at Indian Trail Baptist Church here in Charlotte, lovely sanctuary auditorium. We got plenty of room, and I'll tell you, I'm speaking, but when I'm not speaking, I'm having a difficult time figuring out which one of these I want to go to because there are parallel sessions going on. And oh, by the way, we're going to have sessions in Spanish.
Oh, great.
And we're going to have translation for the ones that are in English. So if someone, their primary language is Spanish, we can accommodate them.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, well, let's get you back one more time before the actual conference. Thank you, sir, for your time. Apologize for the little technical difficulties we had at the beginning. Got that all straightened out. But keep up the good work. This is fascinating and a real resource. I hope a lot of pastors come to your conference. I think it would be well worth their time.
Well, pastors will love it, but so will laymen.
Yeah.
And so will deacons, and so will elders.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Land. Blessings to you, my friend.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, we all know the Oregon session just ended, and it's been ranked anywhere from a C to an F, depending on who you talk to. I haven't seen anything above a C. And delighted to have in the studio with us today Scott Jorgensen. He's reported on local and state government from various Oregon publications. He's also the Deputy Communications Director for the Oregon House Republicans Office. Lives in Wilsonville, but visiting. And he's written a book called Transition. So, Scott, nice to have you. How you doing, my friend?
Good. I've rested and relaxed, and increasingly so as the 2013 session gets further in the rear view.
So, how would you rank it? C, D, D, F?
C minus.
C minus.
Yeah. It could have been worse. I mean, we held the line on tax increases despite the constant calls for that all session.
Right.
Between $200 and $300 million. We kept pushing for further PERS reform, but that was off the table. And
the fact that you got to go back into a special session to deal with PERS reform would tell me, and get a look at it from the other side, they had control of the House, the Senate, and the governorship, and they couldn't get their main topic out and settled. I mean, it's got to be a failure.
Well, and the bill that they did pass was nothing but lip service towards actual PERS reform, because during the negotiations, they deliberately limited the discussions to inactive PERS recipients, as in people who have already retired who are no longer paying union dues.
Well, there you go.
So they threw those guys right under the bus, even though a lot of them had been paying union dues for decades.
Well, anyway, you're taking in oxygen now, and life's wonderful.
Absolutely, getting to spend some time on the rivers around here and be with family.
Tell us about your book and what made you write this.
Well, I ended up with a lot of downtime, as it were, but it starts around my 30th birthday, which was in May 2010. And at the time, one of my friends, Wally Hicks, was running for state representative from Grants Pass, and another friend, Simon Hare, was running for Josephine County Commissioner. And it was a good time. You know, I was in the press, I was doing a radio show in Grants Pass, but we went out to celebrate my birthday because it was on a Saturday, and as we're doing that, I look around and I realized that, wow, each and every one of my friends here is unemployed. And it wasn't that my friends were losers. A lot of them had gone to college, they always had good work ethics, enjoyed working, they just didn't have much in the way of opportunity. Foreclosure notices were keeping the newspaper running at that point. My own mom lost her home to foreclosure in Grants Pass right around then. But at that point, I had yet to directly feel the effects of the Great Recession. The newspaper changed owners a few months later, and I found myself in the same situation. We ended up in the Portland area and settled on Vancouver, and that's where we were on election night in 2010. Wow. And that was a good night because Simon was elected commissioner. He took out a sitting incumbent. Wally was elected with nearly 80% of the vote. I also found out that night that I was about to be represented in the United States Congress by somebody just barely older than me. Jamie Herrera Butler was the only Republican to pick up a seat on the whole West Coast that year. And shortly thereafter, a 26-year-old by the name of Brandon Vick became chairman of the Clark County, Washington Republican Party. So I started to see this going on all around me and thought, hey, this is pretty neat. You know, people my age and younger are deciding to run for office and they're winning. And so that became the crux of the book.
Wow. And you're calling it Transition.
Yes.
Now, are you seeing a movement within the conservative ranks, Republican Party and others? And you're right, I'm seeing young conservatives come in, but the way they're approaching politics is different than I would call the establishment, the Republican establishment, and it seems to be working. I mean, 2010 was their turnover in Congress as a result of that.
Yeah, and what I found increasingly was that it wasn't part of any orchestrated movement. It was just people individually here and there doing it. And you know, as the book goes along, everywhere I went, I just kept meeting more and more young people that were running for office. And in 2012, it was the same as 2010 in that each and every one of them won. And everywhere I've lived in the last 7 years, there are now young people representing at the city level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level. And it's no accident and it's no coincidence, and I think you're going to start seeing more of it, and it's a peaceful transition of power between generations that's going on.
Well, and I'm glad to see it because all research shows that the millennials, which would be kind of, you're at the top end of the millennials, but that bracket seems to be very conservative, very traditional, family traditions. You save money. I mean, you do all the things that the silencer generation did to build the country. So it's kind of like it's coming back.
Well, and that's one of the themes of this book, too, because to me, the Great Generation was forged by the adversity of the Great Depression, and they basically made the world safe for democracy by fighting World War II and winning it. And I think my generation will have similar opportunities with the adversity that we've faced, because in the same way that the Great Generation, and unfortunately they're leaving us you know, after making such great contributions. They were shaped by Pearl Harbor. I think my generation will be shaped by September 11th. You know, some parallels there. They were shaped by the Great Depression. We'll be shaped by the Great Recession. And I think there's some opportunity that's going to come out of it. And then instead of sitting around complaining about things, that people my age and younger say, well, let's take part in the process. And I got to see that play out in this last legislative session, because Wally was there, and my state representative John Davis from Wilsonville, who's 30 years old, you know, just turned 30. So I was getting to see them in caucus meetings, having their voices heard and being taken very seriously by people many years older than them.
What do you think's happening to the Republican Party? I mean, it seems to be in transition. You've probably heard all the complaints like I have as a former chairman of the party statewide for 4 years. I ran into the establishment big time, and I realized, whoa, wait a minute, there's another force out here. We backed up and came back into the state and accomplished things another way. What do you think's happening?
Well, I think there's some internal strife, but there always is. But I think what tends to unify you is watching the other guys be in power and doing a bad job. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now. And there shouldn't be a purity test for being a Republican, because a lot of the people my age and younger are conservative for different reasons, and a lot of people are, but especially in this state, you have 30 years worth of inertia going on,
right,
and a culture that exists within these state agencies because of that inertia. And I think that's the only way anything's really going to change, is if you have people with a new perspective in there. So I think the Republican Party would be wise to embrace these young people and to bring them into the fold and let them be part of the process, because, you know, based on what I've seen so far and what I've documented in here,
yeah,
it's working.
It's working. Well, and you guys get it. I mean, which is so interesting to me, because I think the future is in very good hands. You know, are you going to run for public office?
Maybe at some point. At this point, my role with the House Republican office is to just get other people elected. And I think once I've done that for a while, and plus, you know, I'm just raising my family,
yeah,
and that's been difficult these last few years given the economic circumstances. But you know, I'm getting settled over there in Clackamas County and having a good time. And if I keep an eye on my county commissioners and decide that I think I can do better at some point, I'll happily throw my hat in the ring there.
Where can people get a copy of your book?
It's available on Amazon.com.
All right.
I'll also be doing some appearances here and there.
Okay. It's called Transition, and by W. Scott Jorgensen. Check it out. Do you think there is a move back to conservatism in the state of Oregon? I mean, it's been a long time since we've had the governorship. It's been a long time since we've had a U.S. senator, but it appears maybe the atmosphere is right.
Well, I think all of human history goes that way. It's action, reaction, and
right,
I think once the pendulum goes too far one way, and if you look at it right now, most of the major state agencies that are in charge of the issues that are most important to Oregonians are in shambles. We paid Rudy Crew $300,000 to go find another job somewhere else. The press is having a field day with that, because the more they look, they say, wow, he violated state travel policy. Yeah. He was gone a third of the days he was supposedly working here. The Department of Corrections is in shambles. The Employment Department is in shambles. And these agencies are all being run by somebody who has a decade's worth of experience running them. So right, he can't say that it's because he doesn't know what he's doing or is learning on the job.
Yeah, but unless you get control of the House and the Senate and the governorship, or at least one of those three, they continue with their nonsense.
Well, I plan to work tirelessly to help flip some of these House seats to get us a majority, and I think nothing's more motivated than being there in a legislative session and being in the minority, because it's a very frustrating process. And if jobs and the economy are priorities for the average Oregonian, that certainly was not reflected in the daily agendas of the legislative session.
Were you in the session before last? Not this last one, the one that it was 50-50 in the House? And
no, but I keep hearing from everybody that it went a whole lot smoother.
Yeah.
And I think some of the education reforms that were implemented during that session were starting to be rolled back this time around, which is disingenuous. And that's
kind of the point I wanted to go to, because when they were forced to work together, they got along. But it appears that when the liberals have the power, they just roll over and do things. And yet the Republicans have always had a tendency to extend an olive branch. It just seems to be so contentious at times, you just kind of go, whoa.
Well, when we are in the majority, we will treat them with much more kindness than we were treated this last session.
Yeah, and that's one thing I keep hearing a lot, is that the treatment, and there was really no real reason for PERS not to get taken care of, other than nonsense.
Well, because actual reform would have involved making the Democrats' biggest political donors slightly uncomfortable.
Well, there you go. So, what do you think the future is for young Republicans?
I think we're going to continue to see them running for office and winning, and part of my hope is that having this book come out might help us in the candidate recruitment process. And one of the things I talk about towards the end is that there's a lot of future leaders in their communities right now who don't even know that they're future leaders, but they're leaning that way, and they just need a push. They just need to hear the call. And I'm hoping that on some level this can help make that call and inspire them when they see that other people have been doing it and been successful.
Yeah. And I commend you on that, because I really want to see more young people get involved in the process, because what's going to turn things around is your generation and others to just get in the process, get in there, go for it, and get elected early. Go for it. you know, make it happen.
Well, yeah, and if you look at some of the long-term issues facing this problem, especially at the federal level, a lot of it has to do with fixing the retirement age. And the fact of the matter is that people my age probably won't be able to retire until we're 80, but we're also going to live a whole lot longer, so it'll balance out. But I think a guy who is right now on the verge of retirement is less likely to make those kinds of systematic changes that need to happen in order for the system to survive.
Well, Scott, thanks for your service, and thanks for your willingness to do this and be involved. You're a delight and an inspiration, and I hope that people get a copy of your book. It's called Transition by W. Scott Jorgensen. Take a look at it. There's a picture on the screen, and take a look at it at Amazon and read it and share it with others. Thanks for coming in. Best to you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and focus today. Well, here's a question. Do you think peace and liberty and freedom can come to the Middle East? I'm delighted to have with us today Joshua Muravchik. He is a Bush Institute Fellow in Human Freedom, and his updated book offers an eye-opening account of how men and women in the Middle East dream of living in free societies. And Joshua, nice to have you with us. Where are you?
Oh, thanks very much. I'm delighted that you're having me on. I'm at my home in Wheaton, Maryland.
Wheaton, Maryland. Okay, nice to have you. The magic of Skype. Well, your new book, Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and boy, do you think democracy can come to the Middle East?
Well, I'm sure it can. The question is how long it will take. Democracy started out in the world just as recently as 1776. The United States, the newborn United States, was the very first one. And over the last, whatever it's been, 240 years, 230 years, which is not a long time in the span of history,
right,
most of the world has come to having democratically elected governments. The Middle East has been the biggest exception to that, but I think it will eventually follow in the train.
Wow, that's quite a statement, because there seems to be so much blocking it now. We've been watching all the things there in Egypt and Syria and around. We're thinking, how can they exist when they're fighting among themselves?
Well, what you're saying is real. There's a tremendous amount of violence in that culture. There's a tremendous amount of absolutism. You know, I'm absolutely right and you're absolutely wrong, and let's fight it out to the death to see to see who comes out on top. There is that, and that has to be overcome to have democracy, which is the essence of compromise and live and let live taken to a political level. But you know, democracy has come to places where people really didn't expect it, to most of Asia by now, with China being the really big exception to that, but most of the countries of Asia. It's come to a significant part of Africa, even dirt poor countries that are struggling and miserable in many ways. The Middle East has been a terrible exception, but you know, I think we saw something very, very hopeful just in this last period, which was, it seemed to me and to many observers as if the overthrow of the old regime in Egypt was going to lead to a takeover by Islamists who would impose on that country some new kind of very controlling authoritarian rule.
Right. And
lo and behold, the Egyptian people just rose up against it. Said, we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood to rule us. There's still a long way from democracy there, but I thought it was a very hopeful development.
Well, there's a couple things that come out of this, Joshua. One is I would assume that the digital technology allowing people to really see what the rest of the world is like fuels some form of democracy or freedom, or at least the hunger for it. And the other thing is that can their overriding ideology, if not theocracy, allow for it?
Well, I think there can be democracy in countries that are predominantly Muslim. If we're just talking about whether the religion of Islam can be reconciled with democracy, I think the answer is yes, although it's probably not as easy as having democracy in a Christian country, because Christianity has built into it the idea of give unto Caesar what Caesar and unto God what is God. That is the separation of church and state. And Islam does not have that at all. So that makes it more difficult. But still, we have countries like Indonesia, which are predominantly Muslim countries, which are practicing democracy. And there are a handful of others like that, not in the Arab world. The Arab world has been the most difficult or recalcitrant. Last point, I'm sorry to be so long-winded. I don't think democracy is compatible with the ideology of Islamism.
Yeah.
I think it can happen in a Muslim country, but I think Islamism of the Muslim Brotherhood or of Al-Qaeda or of the mullahs in Iran is an absolutist ideology which is not compatible with democracy.
When Middle Easterners dream of democracy or freedom or liberty, what's that dream look like to them?
Well, you know, it doesn't look so different than it looks to us. I mean, the book that I've written is about finding people who have been spending their lives in those countries fighting for democracy and getting to know them and learn their histories. And I've written small biographies of how they came to be the way they are. And they have an idea of what freedom is, that you have to respect other people's differences. You have to be free to think your own thoughts, worship God in your own way. They really do get that. I'm not saying that everyone in those countries gets that by any means, but there's a group of people in those countries who see it pretty much the way we do. Sometimes they see it the way we do because they had the opportunity to come for a couple of years as students or something to our country and see it in action and think, wow, why can't we live that way? They came to, right. I spoke to people in Saudi Arabia, for example, which is such a different place, who had the opportunity and said to me, to the best years of my life for those couple of years I spent in Connecticut, or things like that.
Do you think these patriots of freedom are willing to pay the ultimate price?
Well, the people that I've chosen as sort of subjects for my book are willing. Some of them, I'm sad to say, have come awfully close. There's an Iraqi man that I got to know, and he's not at the very top echelon, but he's a figure. He's a political player, as they say, in Iraq, and he had so many attempts on his life that in one of them they shot up a car that was his car, but he wasn't in it, but his two 20-some-odd-year-old sons were in it, and they were both killed. So in a sense, that's a bigger price than giving your own life. I think if you asked him, he would have rather it been him than his sons. So these are people who are prepared to really give everything for
wow. That is, again, the book is called Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and you may want to check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. Joshua, what do you think's ahead? I mean, now that things have been overturned again in Egypt, what do you think's going to happen? Because that is a tremendous movement in the right direction, but will it be harnessed to continue in the right direction?
You know, I wish I felt I knew the answer to that question. I think it will be in the long run. How bumpy the road will be in the short run, I'm not sure. But this is a tremendous blow to the Islamists, not only in Egypt. We had the 2011, we had the overthrows of old dictators, and then we had in several countries the Islamists immediately come to the fore and take advantage of the situation. And many people, including many people in those countries, were being very rueful and pessimistic and saying, instead of an Arab Spring, we're going to have an Islamist winter. But lo and behold, the Egyptian people just said, no, we don't want that. And I think maybe the best case scenario is that we really will get to democracy in Tunisia. Tunisia is a small country, but it could be the model for the others. The Islamists are in the lead in Tunisia, but they did not have as much control as in Egypt, and I'm sure they are reeling from what's just happened in Egypt, and I'm sure the non-Islamists are really feeling energized there, and that might make for a successful consolidation of democracy in that one country, and it could stand as a model to the others.
You know, it seems it was more violent post-revolution than it was during the revolution, and to me, that set a whole new level of example as well.
Well, it's so often true. The thing I kept trying to say to my Arab friends is, don't be so happy that you had revolutions. Revolutions are usually bad things. They usually make things worse. And a peaceful, incremental change is almost always better than having a revolution.
Yeah. Well, again, the book is entitled Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and check it out online at Barnes & Noble, or online at Amazon, and I think you'll find it to be a fascinating read. I love your positioning on this, Joshua. Keep up the good work, and let's have you back soon.
Well, I'll be glad to. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for having me on.
All right, talk to you soon. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.